Now, before we start learning how to create reports, I want to introduce you to the report. And first of all, I want you to know that this report that I have created is based on the query inventory, and the query inventory is based on a collection of these tables here. If you recall in the earlier training videos on creating queries, is that when I double click and open up a query, you can see all the different fields in here from different tables. In fact, if I right click and go to the design view, you can see the tables that are up at the top, and I pull the fields down into my query here so I can use that in the query or view them in the query. Manufacturers, computers, table, employees, I'm pulling the first name, last name, I'm pulling the asset tag or the barcode as it were. So with the report, I can only have one record source when I create reports. And so if I want the report to be based on a table, I can only base it on one table if I directly link it to a table. If I choose that as the record source, I can only choose one, like the employees table, the hours and rate table of the employees. See, that doesn't make any sense. That's why I create a query, which is one source, but it's based upon many tables here. So you could say I cheated, or I linked the report to the inventory, which includes all these tables here, and the query inventory is the main source. So I'm basing the report off the query inventory, which is based on many tables that you can see here that have relationships that are linked. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of the query here and double click and open up the report. And you can see how I organized it. A report is basically a form in printable format. In other words, when I take you to the design view of the report, it's going to look a lot like the design view of the forms. But first of all, I'm in the report view, okay? Up at the top, I've got the title of my report, and this could be like 10 or 20 pages long, I don't know. I don't have it in print preview format, or I'm not printing this off yet, but I'm just looking at it in the report view. So department inventory, I have a date here. Now the date, I used a function, the now function. The now function is something that you would learn if you actually watch the Excel training videos. And again, you want to emphasize Excel, but also the functions and formulas you can create and perform in Excel, you can replicate and duplicate in here. Because the now function here actually pulls in today's date. It'll always pull in today's date. So anytime I generate this report, in this case I open it up, there's today's date because, hey, that's the date that we're printing the report. Then down below what I have is I have it grouped into departments. I said, look, I want all the departments, the code's 100, human resources, everybody's grouped. Everybody in our company. Once you group them by department here, then I got it grouped by employees. So I have my employees here, and it's actually alphabetized by last name. It's sorted. There's Banks, Hill, and Wiggums. I mean A to Z, ascending, okay? Now for each employee, I actually have their asset tag number, or their barcode for the computer that we purchased, which was from the manufacturer Sunbelt, on the date that we received it from Sunbelt, the purchase price, and then here I did some calculating. I created an extra field, or a control field. In that control field, I said I want to take the total purchase price that we paid for it here, and I wanted to divide it by 3 years. So it's amortized over 3 years. And then I can just keep scrolling down and looking at all the departments until I get to the very bottom here, and page 1 of 1. Now it's saying page 1 of 1, but this again is just one view. How many views do I have with reports? Well, if you come up here on the Home tab, after you open up the report and click on the drop down arrow, you've got 4. You have the report view, just like you would have the form view when we learned about forms. You also have the print preview. That's something different that we have with reports, because the print preview is what you see is what you get when you print it. So when you click print preview and it flips it over to the print preview view, then the way you see it here is the way it's going to print off on your paper, okay? How many pages here are going to be printed? Well, down at the bottom in the report navigation bar, you can see that I have the next page arrow. So I click on the next page. It actually is going to print on more than just one page, where in report view it just looked like it was on one page because I could scroll forever. But with that much data or that many records, you got an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. It can't stuff them all on one sheet of paper, but electronically, when I'm in the report view, you can scroll down and have many records, just go on and on forever. But since it's got to fit on 8.5 by 11, that's why when I go into print preview, I can actually see what the total amount of pages here they're going to be printed off. In fact, when I come down here and I click on the last page button, there we go. The last page is page 3. So all my records here for all the computers that each one of our employee has fits on 3 pages. When you hover over the middle of the page here, just like you learned in Microsoft Word, if you watch a training video on that, or anytime you're in one of Microsoft programs, they have the print preview. Again, the purpose of print preview is what you see is what you get, so you don't have to waste time. Again, when you hover over the middle of this screen here in print preview, it gives you a little minus sign. When you click on it, it zooms out. When you click on the plus sign, it zooms in on the page. So click on it once to zoom out. You can see down at the bottom, when I click on it to zoom in, it's page 3 of 3. Click on it, next is page 2 of 3. So I got them numbered by pages here. If it goes beyond page 1, it tells me what page I'm on. Okay, and like I said, let me close out of the print preview here. When I close out, it takes me back to the report view. Is I have a total of 4 views. When I click on the drop down arrow, just like the form, remember when you were watching the form training videos, they have the layout view. Click on that. And the purpose of the layout view is some of the basics when it comes to laying out your report, where you can click and drag some fields around. You can also add color to it, change the size of the font. I mean, here we go, Arial, size 10, bold, things like that. And of course, the design view gets a little bit more nitty-gritty, gets a little bit more detailed. That's where we can actually create controls, where I created this little extra control box where I actually divided this purchase price here by 3. So over 3 years we amortized it, and that comes out to $566.67 a year for those 3 years. Now notice when I'm in the layout view, I've got 3 related contextual tabs to the layout view only. I mean, I've got my basic tabs here that are in any view here, or wherever I'm at in my database, but when I'm actually in the layout view on the report, I've got my format tab, my arrange tab, where I can align the boxes to the left, to the right, top or bottom. So if I have boxes that are off just a little bit, I can line them all so they're straight. To the leftmost leaning box here, or the rightmost leaning text box or control. You can set the tab order, and then we have the page setup here. Of course, we're talking now about setting up our page to print it, just like you would, and like in other programs in Microsoft, like Microsoft Word, where we actually have a page layout view that you can go to, set up your page, include the margins to either be larger or smaller on right, left, top, or bottom. Break your page up into columns. Okay. So there's the layout view. Now I want to go to the design view, so I can come over here, right click, and go down and left click on design view. See, doesn't it look pretty much close to the form design view? I mean, you've got your design grid here. The only difference is that we have these little fields here with the headings up at the top, these header bars, that tell us if what we have in these fields are going to be repeated at the top of each page, on every page, or just on the footer of each page. So, for example, I'm going to break this down. The report header. This section right here underneath this report header bar, everything that's in here is just going to be the very first page of the report. That's it. Department inventory. So when I go to page 2, 3, and 4, I'm not going to see it. It's just at the beginning of the report. If I want to include something on the top of each page, then I'm going to have anything in here as the page header. So I added the page header bar. Anything I add below it, like a text box, text, or page numbers or things like that, it's going to be at the top of each page. But by the same token, you can see down here I have the page footer, and that's where I can see, I don't know if you can see it, that little coding there. It's got the coding page, blank of page, and it's got the coding. So in other words, that's the page 1 of 2, page 2 of 3, page 3 of 3. So because it's in the page footer section, or just under the page footer bar, that means it'll be repeated at the bottom of each page. Think of it like this way. If you ever work in Microsoft Word where they have headers and footers, and you want on the top of each page the chapter title, at the bottom of each page the page numbers, that's all you're seeing here. I mean, you've got the report header, it just appears once. If you have a 50-page report, it just appears once on the first page at the very top of the report, which is 50 pages long. I mean, it stays right there. It doesn't go to the other pages. If I want it on other pages, always in the header, or always in the footer, then I just go ahead and I'll add these, and then you just add your text boxes down below. Okay. Next, I have my department code header, and all that means is that I'm grouping my data now, and remember, this is all tied to the inventory query. I'm saying, look, I want to be able to group all my data by departments. That's the first grouping. In fact, you can see it down below. Here's the group. So anytime my data comes into the report, it's going to group them. It's going to say, hey, all the 100s are going here, all the 200s are going here. Or if I didn't do it by numbers, if I did it by code, like HR for human resources, then all the human resource records are going to be grouped together. Now, once I group them together, then I'm going to group them by the employees' last names. So in other words, this in the hierarchical structure, this is the first grouping. It pulls all the departments together of the same department, in this case, which is code 100, code 200, and actually separates them and groups them. So once it groups them within that group, then I've got employees I want to put in there. So I go ahead and I put in the control boxes. I want the employee's first name and I want their last name, right? Of course, I have their labels, so when I look in the report, when I see a first name and last name, I can actually see that that's the employee because there's the label. Remember, this has a lot of the same details when we were creating forms. You have text box, you have control boxes, and you have labels to label those controls. Okay. So then I have here the first name and last name of the employees, then I have labels here. I have the asset tag, and for each label, in the details section down below, I actually have the control box that actually pulls in from the query inventories. It's pulling from all these tables the actual data. Okay, so the barcode. So once it groups it by employees, it'll pull in each employee's signed asset tag, the manufacturer that we purchased this computer from, and why are they separated into these different fields here? Because the details is going to be duplicated, and I need a heading for these details, because these details that I'm pulling in are grouped by employees. So I wanted to bring in the employees and give it, say this is the first name and last name, and each employee is going to have their own data, their barcodes. Now on top of that, grouped above that in the hierarchical structure, are the actual departments. So I'm going to have many employees in each department. So that's why this is on top of that, as you can see the header. So I have my department code headings, then I have underneath that, once I pull in all the departments, I'm going to pull all the employees, I'm going to list the first name and last name control boxes. Then once I pull the employees in, I want the details on the actual computers themselves, so that's below that. And you can see it down below. Again, we have the group, it's by department code here. Then underneath that is subgroup. Once we grouped them by departments here, then we want to group them by employees. And then within that group, we want the details. And so when you look at the report, we'll certainly cover this more and how we want to create reports. And you click on the View button here. That's what you're getting. It's breaking it out. It's saying, okay, here's the section here that we talked about. We're grouping everybody by department first, so it pulls everybody tied to the 100 department. Then within that, we're grouping by employees. It's actually a subgroup. So within here, we're saying, look, here's the label here, and here's the controls that are pulling in each employee's name. Then we have the labels up at the top here, and then for details on each employee, I want it repeated or duplicated, pulling in the data for Tony Banks, which is his asset tag number, and then for Carrie, her asset tag number, and then for Clancy, his asset tag number. So it keeps duplicating those fields enough till all the records are filled in for all those who belong to the Department 100. Now that's a really broken down report where you get a little bit more detailed as I've gotten. In fact, this is more of a level 2, level 3 creation training video. Let me show you how to do some quick reports where you don't have to worry about designing it as detailed as I have unless you want to go ahead and watch the training videos in level 2 access and level 3 and be able to break this down a little bit more so and be as fancy as I've gotten here. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel, get notified of the latest videos, and for only $2 a month, you can have access to all my Microsoft Office training videos.